Today, August 14th, 2013, Mr. Edgar Mitchell, thank you very, very much for hosting us here at your place, at your home in Miami.
Thank you. Hope we can get down what you need on the tape.
Well, thank you very much. The pleasure of being here with you. And the first thing that comes in my mind is today, if you were to choose to go to the moon, would you be motivated for the same reason as you did in 1971?
No, not necessarily. Perhaps much similar. My motivation these days for planet Earth and our environments has to do with creating a sustainable civilization, which we don't have at the moment. And most of my time is devoted toward the science and the promotion of ideas of a sustainable civilization.
If you had to describe it, go back into your mind in 1971 or the years before 1966, when you were chosen as an astronaut, for you, what was the main purpose then for you to go to the moon?
Natural exploration, to extend our knowledge a bit further. I have known for a long time in my understanding of cosmology and astronomy and the various sciences how very little we know about how the universe is put together. And to me, going to the moon was just another step in extending our knowledge and reaching out beyond Earth to start to explore the greater venue.
Today, when we look back in time, it's very difficult to know what part of, let's say, of strategy or military purpose was beyond the exploration. Yourself having a military background, do you consider that the military aspect, a strategic aspect, was fundamental in the space run, or the scientific aspect was more important at that time?
Depends on who you're asking about. People on both sides of it. Certainly in the military mind, using space and the potential weaponry that space could provide was very important. For those of us with a more science mind and interested in subjects like cosmology and the history of Earth, the very fact of just the science of it and understanding was most important.
You happen to be from both, actually, having a military career and yet scientific as well. As an early officer, early military pilot, what was really your main motivation? Was it military then or more scientific already then?
Well, it was already scientific. I was in the military because I had no choice. We had, in the United States, during the Korean War, our draft was on. Young men had to serve in the military. And so it wasn't a choice of whether I served or not. It was how, where, and how. And so I chose, because I wanted to fly, to arrange it so that I was a pilot for the Navy.
Edgar Mitchell, you come originally from a farming family. I believe your father was a ranger. At that time, was flying part of your family dreams, or were you yourself the first one to dream about that?
No, I was in my early life. When I had a few moments to get away from the farm, I went to the local airport and was a line boy, parking airplanes, washing airplanes, taking care of airplanes, and earning flight time with that. I got paid in flight time, not in dollars. And so I had my pilot's license by the time I was 16 years old. And so when the draft during the Korean War was important, I wanted to fly. However, I had just married my college sweetheart, and neither the Air Force nor the Navy took married men into the flight school. And so I had to go about it a different way. I enlisted in the Navy, became a naval officer, and then I went to flight school.
What was your family's reaction regarding, let's say, flying compared to your, let's say, the family background?
All my family was very much 100% with me on what I did in those days.
You came from a rather religious background, if I recall. I mean, fundamentalist Baptist.
My mother, in particular, yes. My mother and grandmother.
Was it important for you as a young boy, this education?
Well, I wanted to satisfy my parents, and yes, so I studied my religion very carefully and was active in the church as a young man. I'm far more ecumenical these days in my understanding, and looking at it more from the science point of view and the larger perspective of a cosmologist.
Mm-hmm. And did your, let's say, space experience have an influence on your vision today or your conviction today?
Very, very much so, because of the epiphany that I had in space as a result of seeing what I call the big picture, seeing Earth and the environments from space. That was a powerful impulse, and that's kept me going all these years as I've pursued that and expanded my periphery of understanding and desire to understand more of the larger picture of how our universe is put together, but using the tools of science to do so.
Mm-hmm. When you left the Earth, you started to more and more to see, let's say, the round aspect, and then the complete Earth. Do you recall the first moment you actually saw the Earth as a ball?
Well, yes, but I knew it was a ball. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, we were interested in accomplishing our mission, mm-hmm. which meant getting to the moon, getting landed properly and safely, doing the task we had practiced to do for Apollo 14, and getting home safely. So my thinking, once we were ready to go to the moon, was how to successfully accomplish our mission.
But having such an important and difficult duty, does one have time, let's say, for enjoyment, or on these marvelous things you saw? Did you have time to enjoy them or not?
Of course.
You did?
I enjoy knowledge and understanding. That's where I get my greatest pleasure, is understanding new things about this universe we live in.
But actually, I mean, during the flights, looking at the Earth, starting to become really a ball, did you have time to, let's say, to have a feeling in your vision of what it meant? Do you have any memory of what you actually felt beyond, of course, the idea of fulfilling the mission? Other than that, do you remember what you felt?
Well, it was one of pleasure of being able to be on the mission, to see the moon approaching, to see Earth receding, and to recognize the context in which all of this was taking place.
Being chosen as an astronaut for the moon, you were many to want to do that. And what were, let's say, the primary skills that were asked from the astronauts? I imagine being excellent pilots, but other than piloting, what was expected as a primary qualification, I would say?
Well, I was one of the first to have both test pilot credentials and a PhD from a major technical school. So that was added to my credentials. And my task from the very beginning, once Sputnik went up and I knew I was interested in going into space, it was to accumulate all the credentials I could that would get me selected and on an Apollo team to go to the moon.
And you participated yourself directly in the elaboration of the LEM before piloting. What was your, let's say, your role regarding the LEM or the conception of the LEM?
Well, it wasn't a conception. It was, I was one of the astronauts sent to Grumman aircraft to participate in the testing of the vehicle in pressure chambers and altitude chambers on the stand, to make sure it was ready to be shipped to NASA for flight tests. So that was my job with NASA.
Mm-hmm. But one thing is amazing in regard to that period, the fact that in a way it's science fiction, and on the other hand, the material that you had, in particular with computers, was extremely primitive compared to the type of computers we have today.
Of course. But you used what you had, mm-hmm. to carry out your mission. And yes, computers were in their infancy during all of the period of the 60s that I was preparing myself to go to NASA. But we knew they were coming along, and we used what we had at hand.
In fact, using numbers rather, very often when one reads your journal, a lot of numbers are used rather than sentences. Was it partly also to let's say, to use a minimum space on the computer facilities?
Well, that was part of it, but most of it was just to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Get there, get it done effectively, and come home.
During the preparation, did they train you to extreme conditions, in extreme dangers? Were you trained like in, because there was always a possibility of never returning back. So was it part of your training?
Well, our training was fundamentally focused around what if this happens, or what if that happens, and to prepare for contingency. So failed equipment, things that didn't work like they were supposed to, that was most of our training. What if this happens, what if that happens? And we were well prepared in that regard.
But yourself, as a human, when you're always facing the what about, what if, at that time, what did you feel?
How do I work better to get the job done? How do I protect myself? How do I protect my crew? My job is to go do this task. What is going to keep me from doing it? What are the failure modes that would keep me from doing it? And how do I get around them if they happen? Mm-hmm. That's what our training was about.
But looking back, when we read about all the difficulties, various difficulties that you have to go through, that you have to manage, would you consider that each mission was extremely dangerous?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. But the fact that we accomplished them with minimum loss of life and minimum failure, but we knew how to overcome failure. We had practiced the failure modes, and so nothing was a really great surprise to us in that regard.
I'm thinking of one particular moment when the abort button was on the position on, and you ran the risk to lose, in fact, the lower part of the limb and have to be sent back to the module. At that time, other than risking to miss the mission, you were running a real risk for your life as well.
Well, again, it was another failure mode that I knew about. I knew all the failure modes that we might encounter, and what we were planning to do about it if they happened. And so troubleshooting the abort light coming on, very quickly we were able to turn off that particular switch or that circuit so the light went out, and we didn't have to worry about it. But and we could, instead of having an automatic abort, we had a manual abort then. We'd have to go through all the procedures step by step by step. And the abort light was just a signal for that. So when we disabled that abort light, then we knew we were in a manual abort mode, if we ever had to do that.
There are so many things that happen at the same time. We see you extremely busy, having no second to lose in these moments. At the same time...
That's what training is all about, being prepared to do what has to be done. Now, Lucas here, being a pilot like I was, you have to anticipate these failures and learn and be prepared to handle them when they occur, and that's what we did.
What about fear? Because of course the person outside of the event, like we are, try to be in yourself. We imagine if I were Edgar Mitchell at that time, what would be the fear? What would be the place?
Well, I won't say we were fearless, but we certainly spent a lot of time learning how to overcome problems. So the main issue was, how do I solve this malfunction? How do I get around this and keep going? And that was what training was all about. Understanding the machinery well enough that it didn't matter what happened between us, the people on the ground and ourselves in the spacecraft. We could find a way to solve the problem. Unless it blew up right in our face and we were instantly dead, we had a way to work on these things.
Did you, your family, your folks, before you were leaving, did your family get this fear very much, or was the joy more important? When you look back
no,
at their reaction,
doing the job was more important.
But for your family, for your folks, when you left, what?
They were proud of what we were doing, and very supportive.
I'm sure they were extremely proud after your return. But by the moment you left, did your folks tell you that they were scared?
If they were really concerned, they hid it very well.
Uh-huh. So you got a very big support. Uh-huh. What about their, let's say, their reactions when you told them, I'm going to become an astronaut?
When what?
When you told your family, I'm going to become an astronaut, what was your family's reaction?
Well, I don't remember that it was anything but supportive,
Mm-hmm.
because I had a lot of learning to do, a lot of go back to school, get more education, do my duty as a naval officer, and it was an exciting future.
So I go back to that question of fear, because it's something that for us in adventure is always the main question: is how can a man go beyond the notion of fear when you run risks? And for you, what was your technique to go beyond fear?
To understand the job, understand the equipment, understand the procedures so well that we had confidence we could handle whatever came along.
And by the time you landed, was the moment of landing, when you recognize, for instance, that the craters look like you've studied, you recognize Cone Crater and the area. Was this a surprise or a non-surprise? What was the feeling?
It was satisfaction. We're right on target, and that was where everything happened. What you tried to create was, I know exactly where we are because we're right where we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And the landing, the moment where you were really on the ground, was this did you have time to really feel the importance of the events then?
Just another part of the job. Of course, we felt important, but success. We had successfully carried out what we set out to do.
How about happiness? How would you
always a sense of satisfaction. I would call it satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Satisfied that we landed exactly where we were supposed to land. Everything was working like it was supposed to work. The problems that had come up during descent, we had worked around where they were not handicapping us in any way. So we were right in running a successful mission.
One of the first things symbolic was, of course, to plant the American flag. For you, as a man walking on the moon, was the fact of being an American fundamental, or did you at that time feel that something was changing, becoming, let's say, a citizen of the world?
The latter, of course. The citizenship was okay. It was what it was, but the more important was getting the job done.
And getting the job done, as far as your own identification, what was it?
It's just my nature. That was me. That was my job, what I'd chosen to do. I'd worked hard to do it correctly, and was good at my job. So it was just the next step in a long chain of successful events. And fully recognized I was pretty good at what I did.
And then the change, I would say, of your conception after the mission, because you're filled with a lot of ideas that go much beyond, in fact, your mission.
Well, sure, it opened a lot of questions, a lot of new vistas to look at, new problems to explore, new understandings of the way the universe is put together, new feelings about all of that needed to be explored and carried out.
Do you think that some of the questions that interest you today, you wouldn't have thought of them if you had not been to the moon?
Quite probably, but by and large, most of my life has been oriented toward resolving these types of big issues. As I said, my real interest is as a cosmologist, and that means understanding how the universe is put together. And going to the moon was a very important and, for me, very great part of it.
On the moon itself, on the surface, compared to what you were prepared to see or to feel, did you have lots of surprises?
No. We practiced everything so thoroughly that there was very little that would amount to a surprise. It was the only real surprises were failures in the equipment that didn't work quite like it was supposed to, that we had to use our talent and our training to overcome. So, no, the mission, our training was surprisingly good. Everything went just about like we expected it to.
One very, I would say, emotional moment is when you walk near the cone crater, and you're very close to it, but somehow it's more the climbing seems to be more difficult than you expected.
Well, that's true. It was a tough climb to get up there, and that was because we were pulling the Met and climbing uphill and running out of time and having to do all the task of gathering data that we were doing. It was work. It was hard work, and we were just perspiring and going at it.
During the mission with Alan Shepard, the two of you on the moon, were you? Do you have the feeling that the relationship became personal, or was it all part of a, let's say, of technical target, technical mission? What is your feeling about?
Well, there was certainly admiration on both of our parts that the other person was doing their job and doing it well, and that we were a good team. And if we kept doing it and doing everything, making it work, we were more pleased and satisfied with ourselves that we were doing what we were supposed to do.
Did you keep contact with your astronaut fellows after the mission?
Well, pretty much. We're all, quite a number of us were members of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation at Cape Kennedy, and that's kind of our after the mission or after the job activity that we're all pleased about, because it helped educate some younger people and prepared for the future and get new minds coming in to take over from us.
And is your feeling that most astronauts have been extremely influenced, I would say, philosophically after the return from the moon, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Some of us are more, I consider myself more of an academic in that regard, interested in studying the issues, studying the far-out problems and the implications for them. That's kind of my nature. Not everybody's like that, and that's fine. That's just the way I am.
How do you combine, I would say, the scientific and the spiritual approach of things?
Well, to me, it's about emotion, it's about knowledge. And that's why I formed the Noetic Foundation to study the nature of consciousness, because that was a big missing item in science for 400 years. It's only during the 20th century, the end of the 20th century and into the 21st century here, that we have made real inroads into understanding what being conscious is all about, not only in humans, but in plants and animals and in nature itself. And that's been a big part of my life since coming back from the moon.
What major discoveries have been made out of that? In other words, what have we discovered lately about consciousness?
The biggest discovery is that consciousness in its most simple form is simply awareness. And we now understand it goes down to the quantum level of nature, and that awareness in some form is fundamental at all levels of nature, clear down to the subatomic particles. And that's quite a revelation that we did not know 40 years ago or 50 years ago.
And what is the basis of this knowledge? How did we found? How do we study it?
Well, in the realm of quantum mechanics, and many scientists around the world looking at awareness, and the fact that awareness is dependent upon changes with the type of experiment you do, and information comes out of it, and you see that matter in all of its form, clear down to the particle level, exhibits some sort of awareness, and that's new stuff.
Is awareness connected? In other words, is your feeling that our brains are communicated, or let's say our awareness, are they connected to each other? In other words, can we add, let's say, the awareness of one human being, because we always classically we've always felt isolated in our own head. Now, let's say, is your feeling that let's say the addition of our various awareness constitutes a larger awareness?
Of course, and it is the fact that we're now understanding that, well, awareness at the quantum level, it goes clear down to the subatomic level, that particles entangled in a subatomic process and going apart from each other remain entangled. And it's like the great work with Sheldrake and animals, dogs recognizing when the master is leaving work and coming home, even though he's not there yet. That sort of entanglement of mind. Now, it's mind and it's not brain. The brain has something to do with it and is important in it, but it is not a product of the brain. It's a product of nature, and it goes deeper than just the brain. And this is true in all levels of nature, plants, subatomic matter, just matter itself. And we still don't have all the answers to that by far. We've got a lot of answers, and we've discovered a lot of answers in the last 40 years, but we're a long ways from having all the answers.
Some people think that the brain could only be some sort of a receiver of conscience that would be outside of the human body. What is your feeling about it?
Well, it's not all in the brain, and it's not all outside the brain. The brain is necessary to run the body and to be the basic machinery, or ideologically, for managing the body. But consciousness is not just brain at all. It is far more expansive and far more all-encompassing than what we find in the brain. That's why the ancient religious question, is important. Does consciousness survive death? And we don't have an answer to that yet. Now, there's ideas on both sides of that question, but there's still adherents on both sides of that question that say yes and say no, and we don't have the definitive answer yet.
What is your personal feeling about it precisely, yourself?
Well, I think it's possible that consciousness survives death. It's very possible, but I depend upon experimental evidence before I make decisions. Mm-hmm. And we're still looking for good, solid experimental evidence on the survival of consciousness, and we don't have it yet.
But if awareness survives let's say, a person's awareness. Is your feeling that it might be an individual awareness surviving, or rather a combination of various awareness surviving?
As it's awareness, I'm using the word as a property, a property of existence, and that means that information is being utilized. So we have to define what's information and how is it being utilized, and we don't have all the answers. What we've learned in recent years about holography has become very, very important to this. But do we have all the answers with holography? No, we don't.
What in particular was important in the discovery?
Pardon?
What in particular was important? You say
a process in nature called quantum holography, which is a follow-on to Max Planck's discovery at the end of the 19th century that matter emits energy, information, that all matter is emitting all the time, and that information is being emitted. What Walter Schempp discovered only about 18 years ago now is that information being emitted is quantum entangled, coherent, and carries information about the physical object in the way what the ancients called is the Akashic record. The ancients thought that all phenomenon is preserved in nature in some way. They called that the Akashic record. The quantum hologram that Schempp discovered is a mechanism that shows that to be true. And we haven't really understood yet all the ramifications of that discovery. But it's very fundamental to this question of, does consciousness survive death, and in what form? And I don't have the answers. Some may think they have the answers. I don't know exactly where it's all going yet.
Is this your feeling that the more we discover about the way we function, the way we react, does the place of freedom still? What is the place of freedom? Freedom of decision. Do you have the feeling that the freedom tends to be smaller and smaller the more we discover what we're about, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. We have the freedom to, within our sphere of knowledge and with our capabilities, to do whatever we choose. We still have choice. Now, the more we understand about it, it may reduce our freedom. We may find that there's more control out there than we thought there is, but we're still experimenting and exploring those particular ideas.
Being as open as you are to, let's say, to the possible, you don't close doors to whatever has not been proven or disproven. What is your feeling towards religion and yourself? Is religion still something that has any justification for yourself?
Religion is just an ancient belief system. And we have several of them on our earth, the Christian, the Judaic, the Islamic, the Hindi, all belief system, attempting to answer in a pre-scientific framework the very questions we're asking here, and trying to answer, but outside of those ancient frameworks. But they all emanate from humans asking these deep questions from the very beginning.
Yourself, how do you consider yourself towards a religion? Yourself personally?
Well, I don't consider that religion has the answers. And being a scientist, I'm looking for ways to validate and to experimentally validate our ideas to see how they hang together. I don't particularly. I'm not locked into any belief system that we can't have some evidence to support it.
You don't need to practice any religion yourself?
Well, we need to, if there are things that can improve our understanding and improve our ability to understand more, or to grasp more data, then I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the whole thing. We don't have the answers, and how do we go about the answers? To me, intuition is an important way of learning. Study is an important way of learning, and simply science and testing is an important way of learning, and I like to use them all.
But like going to a church for you, is this something that is useful in one way or another for your studies or for your?
Well, it was at one point. At the moment, I do not subscribe to any particular religious tradition, and so I don't need to go to a church and listen to someone who knows probably no more about it than I do, or perhaps less than I do, espouse it every Sunday or every church day.
Talking about awareness, and you mentioned awareness in being all particles of existence. What about the awareness beyond our frontiers, beyond the Earth? Because you've been known to have explored that aspect of.
Well, but that's only talking about position and place. What we're talking about is the physics
Mm-hmm.
of a situation that certainly goes beyond our particular planet and our particular solar system. Now, there could be different physics in different places in the universe. I would tend to call that a different universe if
Mm-hmm.
the physics are different, but we don't really at this moment have a way to test that.
What about the let's say our neighbors are using the same physical system? When I say neighbors, from other galaxies, possibly. What is your feeling? Because I have heard that you're convinced that we've already been in contact with these.
Well, I have no doubt that we have been visited by visitors from other places and other parts of the universe. The evidence for that's pretty strong.
For centuries or for thousands of years?
Well, I can't say for thousands of years, but certainly for centuries, because there's references to chariots of fire in the sky in the biblical writings. There's a picture in some of Michelangelo's paintings of a UFO. So there are stories that go back hundreds of years. Now, how much further back, we don't have the evidence or the records to show that, but it's rather clear to me that our visitors have been coming here for quite some lengthy time. Now, whether it's the same groups or not the same groups, I have no idea.
How about recently? I mean, on the 20th or 21st century, these visits, did they still occur?
They still occur.
What is let's say the basis of this knowledge that we have about it?
Well, I think the most recent one in my mind that I have personally experienced was the so-called Phoenix Lights event of some 11 or 12 years ago. I wasn't there, but I happened to have been on the telephone with a friend of mine at a laboratory during the Phoenix Lights event, and I got a first-hand description of it. And then the governor of Arizona at first denied it, but then acknowledged the fact that it was a real event and was observed by many credible people. So those are the types of events that have added credence to it, and there have been in the United States alone, but in Europe and your country and other places, there have been stories and sightings and events that have a certain amount of credibility.
But one thing that is a bit troubling is these visits, if they occurred, why didn't we get more in contact? In other words, these intelligence, wouldn't they have been able to, let's say, to communicate more easily with us, to let them know? Because it's what we would have thought as a natural way.
Well, we seem to have within our systems, our political system particularly, people who do not want to acknowledge those visitations and doing their best to keep it hidden.
Why is that?
Don't know why they want to keep it hidden. Is it money? Is it control? I don't have a full answer to that.
But it's surprising because we're so interested in knowing what's beyond our borders. If visitors come, I mean, the least we could do is at least to try to find out who they are, what they want, and well, how they feel.
There are those that do that, and I'm one of them that tries to help do that. But you've got to have things to work with. And I know virtually all of the serious investigators in Europe and the United States and South America. I know virtually all of them on a first-name basis. And they work at it continuously to bring these ideas to the forefront in the public. And but officialdom has so far not been helpful in getting the information out and in making the information real.
It's amazing that they would not make it possible, because it's you know, we launch people to the moon, and you are a very good example of that. So that means that we are, and certainly the American government was interested in going beyond our borders. But why would they refuse to?
Well, I think it has to do. I'm just guessing. I think it has to do with control of knowledge and the potential of future money-making propositions, controlling it for profit. I don't know that for sure, but that's a possibility.
Why would they lose profit if another intelligent would come?
You can answer that question as well as I can. I don't have an answer.
Today you have the feeling that more and more people get aware of that, or
yes. Yes.
And what is your personal feeling about the future? Are we going to be communicating with them in the future? Is it something that is...
Well, the main thing we have to do is survive. And we are not on a sustainable path in civilization at this point. At the rate we're going, I would seriously doubt that we have another 100 years in which to carry on the way we are without destroying ourselves or destroying all of our means of existence. So we as humans have to begin to think individually about what I can do, me personally, to make this a more sustainable civilization that we're in. And together we can make it happen. But if most of us choose to continue the current path, which is destroying our civilization, then that's what will happen.
Mr. Mitchell, you said that you were concerned about the future of the planet. You say, we're not sure that 100 years from now, there's still going to be human beings on this planet.
Well, we have to determine our future. But just remember, at the end of the beginning of the 20th century, there were only 2 billion people on the planet. They were approaching 8 billion, 9 billion. That's exponential growth, and we're still under exponential growth. Just how many people can we bear on this planet and keep it alive and going? And particularly since we're consuming non-renewable resources at an alarming rate with that population.
But we consider countries like India or China who've tried to impose rules on limitation of birth. Is this a solution for you?
Pardon?
If we think of India or China, who've imposed to their population some rules in terms of the amount of children to be allowed to have, what's your feeling about it? Is this...
Well, I think we need to individually recognize the problem and take action. This shouldn't be a political issue. This is an issue for personal survival of ourselves and our families. And we need to each take responsibility for this.
Do you have the feeling that it might be possible that there's some sort of precisely a notion of survival that goes beyond individuals, that in a moment of real danger, in particular if the Earth becomes really, really endangered, there might be some sort of an action that beats each individual conscience.
Well, that's possible. That we somehow awaken a survival instinct. Let's hope so. Let's hope that happens. But at the moment, it's not obvious that that's happening.
Mm-hmm. And how would you organize this awareness?
Well, I'm not sure you organize it, and it has to occur within people, and recognizing we're all a part of the same civilization, and unless we do it together, it's not going to happen. That we have to become personally aware and personally willing to take the steps necessary to do our part to make survivability and sustainability a major issue.
In order to raise this notion of conscience, what is let's say the normal way to do it?
We just have to talk about it. We have to get more people talking about it.
Education as well?
Education is part of it, yeah.
And here's your little dog passing in front of us. Beautiful cutie. Coughing a little bit.
A little cough there.
Mm-hmm. If today you were free to decide, going back to the moon, what flag you would choose to plant as you arrive, which flag would it be?
Oh, I see no reason to change the flag that I'm carrying. I'm an American citizen. I like that. We'll stay with that.
Do you think that it would be important to look at, let's say, the exploration from a more international point of view, or is it?
Of course, but that merely means that we have more people agreeing with what we're talking about here. That's the issue. Doesn't matter the flag that you're carrying is. It's the idea that we're carrying that's more important.
Today, do you feel primarily as an American or a citizen of the world?
Well, let's call it a citizen of the world. Just happen to live in the United States. That's true.
Mm-hmm. But has your notion changed? Let's say your feeling as a national citizen, has it changed in the late years or after the moon?
Well, actually, I do feel more like a citizen of the world. I just happen to live here in this country.
A subject that is very important to you is the subject of peace and find solutions for peace. Today, in which direction do you go in order to help come into this direction?
It's the recognition that we have not really made progress with our wars. Our wars have been ultimately destructive. They're not, for the last 100 years we've had war going on someplace on Earth almost continuously. And all it is doing is destroying Earth and destroying people. And instead of learning to work together and to be civil, that's not civilized. That goes back to the earliest human or animal propensity of the big fish eat the little fish. And we have to, going to be civilized, we have to get beyond that.
What is your feeling about, let's say, the wars that America has been involved in the last 40 years, for instance, Iraq, Afghanistan? What is your feeling about it?
I think it is bad politics, frankly. In other words, we need to talk our way through these problems and not go to war over them. I am not in favor of many of the policies that have led us to war. Now, some of the presidents we've had in the United States, particularly back to the Bush and Cheney era, got this war, periodic war like behaviors going, and we haven't been able to get out of it yet. But and I'm disappointed in our current administration that they haven't found ways to break that cycle, or haven't chosen to find ways to break that cycle. We should have been able to do it, and we haven't.
America has been so advanced technologically, and as well as militarily. Does it seem possible today that America stop being the leader? Because today America obviously is the leader in the world.
Well, let's be a leader, but let's lead toward peace. Let's lead toward making things work instead of destruction, instead of incessant warring against each other for all the wrong reasons. And of course, Israel is one of the worst offenders in this area too, along with many of the Mideast countries that are anxious to go to war at the drop of a hat.
So, but do you think today, again, the notion of wars of religion is back on the table?
It doesn't matter what you call it or what your rationale is. It's not doing the civilization on Earth a good favor.
Being a scientific person, you know that art and artists have been, being very sensitive, have been also very often concerned by these notions and notions of peace. So do you think that science and arts could be starting to collaborate more intensively?
One would think so. One would think so. But it's going to take individuals who have the desire, the understanding of the fact that our current path is leading us nowhere, that this path of warlike behavior is simply going to destroy the planet and destroy the civilization as opposed to enhancing it.
Artists are concerned with the meaning of life very often, the meaning of love, and for you, when you read poetry or when you listen to music dealing with this feeling, do you feel from your scientific point of view, do you feel that there is something that can be communicating?
Well, when we say that, yes, when we say that we're in tune with nature, or in tune with each other, in tune with music, in tune with art, that's a sense of love. That's a sense of peace within, where you are reaching out for the best that's within you. And that is exactly what we're not doing. And when we're talking about war and warring behavior and killing each other and killing off plants or anything, the whole notion is cooperation and living together in peace. And love is the ultimate emotion. And if from the religious point of view, at least certainly from the Christian point of view, love is a fundamental factor.
The Beatles wrote "All You Need Is Love" just as a period when you were astronauts. Did you feel, although very simplistic, but I mean, this feeling, all you need is love, is this something that relates to you?
Well, that's a simplistic idea.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, it's something that we need to feel. And I point to my own experience in space, the epiphany. Now, the epiphany goes back in our civilizations to it's a conversion phenomenon of where you see that the way you're doing things isn't working, that there's a better way to do it. And you shift from the types of behaviors we're talking about that's destroying Earth, and to move toward behaviors that heals Earth. And that's a part of this love equation that you're talking about.
With your military experience, you were familiar with the notion of obedience. You have to obey your superior. You have to obey statements for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons as well. And you probably experienced the notion of your will of freedom. Do you remember this as having been difficult for you, since you're also a person who thinks a lot, you're also an intellectual?
I have never ever been in favor of war. Now, I did serve my country in the military, and I did serve during the Korean War, but I was still a peaceful man at that point in time and wanted to get past war and wanted to get on with reinforcing peace and learning to solve our problems short of war.
It seems to me when I study some of your actions that you were always interested in explaining or just justifying explaining your notion. I give you an example. When you were climbing the crater with Cone Crater, you and Shepard had a different view. You wanted to go all the way to discover the cone. I'd like you to tell me about what you felt at that time, because there was obviously a disagreement. He wanted to give up and you didn't want to give up.
No, it wasn't a matter of giving up. It was a direction we were going. He was heading, in my opinion, and it turned out to be true, he was heading too far to the east and not up the mountain to the Cone Crater, and that turned out to be correct. That he had missed a direction, and he was moving around the rim of the crater as opposed toward the surface.
And you ended up about, what, 50 feet away from the rim?
Well, we were right on the rim. There was just a ridge of rock between us. Just
one question while we're there. Was this similar to what you climb a hill on Earth? Was
Sure.
it in the sense, since you are lighter, do you have the same feeling of climbing, or is it lighter to climb? Because it seems that it was difficult for you to go up.
Well, it's because we're in a very cumbersome piece of equipment. The pressure suit was a very cumbersome piece of equipment. But this is something we had practiced in and practiced. There wasn't anything new about it. We knew what we were doing. We knew the difficulties of it, and it was a hard climb.
What was it? The climb with the or let's say the vertical shapes of it. Did they appear to you different from what you expected?
No.
Just the way you expected. Because we have the feeling that it seems everything seems to be a bit more round, except for the rocks that stick out. Was it the case? Like the hill seems to be a bit like.
I'm sorry, I'm not with you.
I meant when we look at pictures of the shapes of the landscape, hills seem to be a bit more round than it is on Earth. Not as steep or something. Is this the case?
Well, no, it was what it was. It wasn't a major steep hill. Yeah, it was uphill, and it was difficult. But nevertheless, it was 1/6 gravitation. But a pressure suit is very stiff and hard to move, so it had presented problems, obstacles. They were tough.
And another question I was going to ask you about the type of stones that you felt. Do they appear very different or very similar to what you'd find, for instance, in desert places on Earth?
No, they're basalt rock, and very similar to what we have here on basalt rock. Because most of the front surface of where we were was basalt, lava rock that had come out from the inside of the moon in ancient times.
With your equipment, was it dangerous in case you fell, for instance? In case you fell, on your back, since you had all the equipment on the back, was it risky? May you have? Was it dangerous in case you fell on the back?
No. Just have your partner help you up if you couldn't get up by yourself.
But I mean, you were.
We didn't have that problem. So, some of the other flights did. Some of the guys fell down and had to have help getting up.
I have one question. Sorry, but I have several questions, and of course I ask them as we go along, even if they don't have any direct link with one another. But there's one thing I'd like to know. When Shepard chose you, I'd like you to tell me why he chose you to be his partner on that precise mission.
Well, I don't know that he did. What he wanted to do was to get back into since he had been grounded because of his Meniere's syndrome, and he wanted to get back into the training loop. And Gordon Cooper's leaving the program gave him that opportunity. So our natural selection procedure was that we served on backup crew, and then we went to prime crew. I served backup on Apollo 10, then we went to Apollo 13. But headquarters in Washington did not approve that. They wanted Alan, since he had been grounded for some time, to take more training time. So they commanded the switch between 13 and 14, which caused us to take 14 and not 13. But that was really so we could have more training time. And worked out for us fine, of course.
The reason why I ask you this is because I had heard that that Shepard chose you saying, if I am going with Edgar Mitchell, I want to go back, I want to come back alive.
Well, he said one of his statements was he chose me because he wanted to come back. That's true.
That's an incredible compliment, and
yes, he did. Make
see, you're very humble, because obviously you didn't tell me that until I pushed you to say it.
Well, that really wasn't the sequence of events, but
this must have been quite an incredible compliment for you to hear a statement like that. The trust.
Well, it was, yes, it was very pleasing. Thank you.
When you were a child, you were fascinated by flights, by airplanes, but there was also a man who was trying to build rockets. I believe his name was Goddard.
Who?
Goddard, I believe his name was.
Goddard.
Goddard. I would like you to tell me this anecdote.
I don't remember it, frankly, at this point.
Wasn't that a man who constructed some sort of engine or rockets, and you were passing by when you were a child? Is that right?
Oh, Goddard?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I lived right down the road from him. My family's farm was just, I had to go past his house to go to school. And so he was just a person in my life in the early days. I did not know the family at that point.
Oh, you didn't know what he was doing?
No. No, only after, later on, after I matured and got into NASA, did I understand the significance of Goddard.
There's another event of your youth that interests me quite a bit. This is the crash on Roswell, which is still a debate today. You were a young man, I believe. You were in your teenagers when it happened.
I was going off to college when that happened. Yes.
So what is your experience of it?
Well, I had no experience with it except for the fact when I came back from the moon and went back out to that Roswell to see friends and to give some lectures. Some of the descendants of the people associated with the Roswell incident came to me and wanted to tell me their story, which I listened to. And they were, one of them was the one that involved with the undertaker that provided coffins for the dead aliens. Another was a descendant of the sheriff's department that controlled the traffic around the crash site. And another was a Air Force officer that was a friend of my family that concurred that the Roswell incident was a real incident. So that, other than that, I had no personal experience with it except for the telling of the people, these people that I'm talking about.
Have you got any information about these bodies? What were they? Where? What?
Well, they were all taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I don't know where they ended up. They might have preserved the bodies and taken them out to from Wright-Patterson out to Area 51, I do not know that. Do not know the answer to that.
From people who did testimonies of them, did they have any similar appearance to human beings, or were they quite different?
Well, they were the so-called grays, and we've seen all sorts of pictures of what they looked like. I have no personal experience with that, so I can't say.
But is your feeling that because it's a debate today, a very important debate today still, is this your feeling that the people who told these things were, let's say, were very accurate in the descriptions and?
Well, there seems to be a fairly consistent description. Yes.
The question is, beyond that, is I'm still.
Oh, that's mine. That's Suzanne.
Sorry.
Pick it up. Hello, Suzanne. Yeah, Lucas is here. We're doing an interview at this point.
What is so impressive when you hear about things like bringing coffins and having diseased people from another planet, another area, is to think that somehow there's so much resistance not to give, for instance, more information about these bodies.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to know why was it so important to hide this information, officially speaking?
Well, I have no idea what the authorities were doing or the reason for it. There was a group called Magic 12, MAJIC 12, in the United States that seemed to be controlling the dissemination of that knowledge, and they were holding it very close. And I don't know the answer to that. Mm-hmm. But it was, yes, it was. There was quite an effort to avoid telling the people about this.
When lately you express yourself publicly, there was some sort of a resistance to your statements. Even recently, a resistance.
Well, I'm not aware of that. There might be, but.
It seems surprising because it'd be such an important news to be in contact with our neighbors, or.
Where do you get the notion that there was resistance to the statements?
I mean, when I say resistance, I mean the reaction saying no, this is not possible. This can be, in those kind of.
Well, I'm not aware of that.
Mm-hmm. But from the official, or let's say from the people that were with you on the space expeditions, do you feel alone in this feeling, or are you?
No, many of the fellows have had experience. They don't disagree. They don't deny particularly, mm-hmm. but at the same time, they don't disagree with the fact that there seems to be evidence from alien visitation here.
Mr. Mitchell,
many of them haven't followed through as much as I have, but okay.
Mr. Mitchell, if you had the chance to be in contact with one of these beings, what would you be your first attempt in communication?
Well, to establish a rapport so that we could communicate.
And what would you like to know from them?
Well, more about where they came from, what they expect, what was their purpose coming here, and on and on. There's talk all day about that.
Would you, by definition, be rather scared? In other words, would you have the feeling that if life exists beyond our borders, it might be similar to the type of aggressive life we find on Earth, or is there hope that it might be different?
Well, I want to find out whatever it is and know what their civilization was like, and whatever their intentions were and what they hoped for us, and if they had benign intentions or if they had more hostile intentions.
Do you have the feeling, Mr. Mitchell, that the way life organized itself could be similar or at least comparable to the way mineral the mineral world organizes itself. For instance, if you look at galaxies, it seems that galaxies are threatening each other the same way as dogs could be threatening each other. In other words, did life imitate the chemical world?
Well, I just don't agree that galaxies are threatening each other the way dogs do. This is more the laws of physics. And as far as we understand the laws of physics, the galaxies aren't threatening each other. They just happen to be existent and coming together in certain ways, which might conflict or might be destructive. But I don't know of any intent that causes that to happen.
In other words, you're not supposing that galaxies could be actually atoms of animals, or at least of beings.
Galaxies as a whole being conscious, no, I don't think so.
So this, which is why I would like to have you explain to me a bit more about this notion of consciousness and awareness, the distinction between both.
Well, awareness is a fundamental notion leading to consciousness, and its more complex forms. Awareness leads to consciousness. At the quantum level, when particles are entangled and go apart from each other, they maintain entanglement. We can say that's awareness, but it is not a high form of consciousness. When we think of consciousness, we think more of the ability to choose, more of the ability to appreciate our environment, to act on our environment the way humans and animals do. Plants have a consciousness too that's not nearly as complex as humans.
Janice melody.
Uh-huh.
Janice melody.
Which is it, line 1 or 2?
Janice melody, line 2.
Kathy will pick it up. She should.
One question, when we look at relating to awareness or possible awareness, when we look at evolution, for instance, fish that through various generations have created a false eye on the back near the tail, and it took generations and generations to have this false eye so that they would be attacked on the back, and it's a way of protection. Normally, today it's generally admitted that it's a selection, natural selection, but there is no conscience and there is no, it's just the accident of selection. And
that is not correct.
And another thing is another.
That's Darwinian. The Darwinian notion is incorrect. Lamarck, 50 years before. 50 years before Darwin, was saying that evolution is a learning process, and we now know that it is. That is precisely what the quantum world brings to it, that there is an interchange of information, there is quantum entanglement, and the quantum hologram is a mechanism by which information is at the quantum level is passed in nature, and it changes evolution from simply a random mutating process to a learning process.
In the case of the false eye of the fish, that's an example of this application?
Well, I would think so. I haven't studied that particular.
I'm very interested by that because I tend to believe that myself too, and I have sometimes debate with scientists who just think of the random evolution in this case, and it seems to me hard to believe in a purely random selection.
It wouldn't be random. It would be because of a need on the part of the species to gain information that way. Thinking about, I need to know what's behind me, for example.
Now there's one point that is very important for me to discuss with you. That's music. Music, you played several instruments yourself as a child and as a young man.
Well, sure. I find music that's a form of our sophistication, a form of nature that has become important. It's important as what we make it to be, and it's good good for entertainment, good for communication, good for soothing the soul. A lot of applications of music. Pay your money and take your choice.
So yourself, you played several instruments.
But I didn't. I was trying to find one that I was good enough to make a living at, and I didn't think I was good enough at any of them to make a living at them.
So you became an astronaut.
So I became an astronaut instead.
Now, beyond the joke, you did do some instruments. Which ones?
Pardon?
You did some instruments.
Sure. Well, I played the violin, I played the viola, I played the piano, I played the sousaphone, the saxophone, and the trombone.
And what music, when you were these ages, what was your favorite music?
Well, I think of the violin and the piano were my favorite instruments, and whatever went with those was what I was really taken with. But I didn't think I was good enough to make a living at them, and I had other interests too. So that's the way I went.
What about saxophone? What kind of music did you play on your saxophone?
I was in a band. I was in a marching band with that when I was in high school, with the trombone, the sousaphone, and the saxophone were when I was either in the school orchestra or the school band.
During your career as a pilot and then as an astronaut, did you listen to a lot of music?
Generally, but the answer is yes, but I certainly wasn't a fanatic about it. I listened to it because it was pleasing to me.
What kind of music did you like particularly?
The more popular music. I wasn't really a jazz fan, but what word? I don't even know what word I want to use. Classical. Let's say classical music.
And the American music, like the blues, the rock.
I won't limit it to American music. I mean, that was Western Europe and American.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied all of the European masters when I was playing music.
On the way to the moon, did you listen to some music?
I had some tapes that I had audio, little tapes that I had taken so that I could listen to music on the way, and I did.
Was it? Of course, it must have been on your free time. The moment there was no more communication with the Earth.
Yeah.
And did you feel at that time necessary to relax, to listen to music to relax?
That was one way. I didn't get to use that music as much as I would have liked, but I did take it.
But you remember having played it on the way?
Well, a few times, but I was too busy to really play it as much as I would like.
Mm-hmm. But do you remember what you played yourself?
I'd have to look it up. I have a record of it here, but I'd have to look it up right now. And the tape, I think I've sold all the tapes that I took at auction. They've been sold off. I may have one or two left in there somewhere. But.
Did you make the choice yourself of the music for the moon? Was it what, a mixture of classical and modern?
Classical, modern. Classical and modern.
You couldn't name any artists in particular that you chose in this band?
No, I wouldn't. If I thought about it, I might after a while, but I don't right now. No.
It was a Berlioz.
Yeah.
Berlioz. Berlioz. Okay. Berlioz. Berlioz. B-E-R-L-O-Z.
L-I-O-Z? Berlioz, no?
I don't remember that one.
What is your feeling about the inspiration that space does to musicians? As you know, many musicians have written about space, have written about going to the moon.
Well, I haven't studied that phenomenon, but that's not surprising. Poets have written about it, writers have written about it, so why not musicians?
You remember that song, famous song sung by Sinatra, "Fly Me to the Moon"?
Oh yes, of course. I know Sinatra pretty well.
As an astronaut, how do you feel when you hear this tune, having been yourself to the moon?
Well, just another piece of music, and since I knew some of the characters involved, it brings back memories of early life.
And
Quincy Jones?
does it let's say, does it speak to you particularly? Do you feel that it's a connection with you, or not especially?
Not particularly.
In other words, you would not have liked it differently if you had not been to the moon. Is that it?
Yeah, probably.
After returning from the moon, did your sensitivity change towards music?
Can't say that it did. I still enjoy my music. I did then too.
And do you listen to music today a lot?
Not a lot, but I have it in here. I listen to it sometimes, and I've got to redo all of my devices in there. They're all old, so I need even new television, new audio devices, new pieces of equipment to play them.
I know that on the moon you were so busy that you didn't have time to enjoy yourself so much. Everything was
busy when you were on the moon.
Very, very busy.
Yeah.
But looking back now, if you had to express it, or have someone express musically what the moon is when you are in there, what kind of music would it inspire you to describe?
I don't know.
In other words, if I want to be more direct.
Is that number 2 or number 1?
Mine too.
Kathy will get it.
Yeah, Jenny's melody.
Again, okay.
So,
Wishing her happy birthday.
so my question is, looking at the moon from a walker's point of view, you've walked on the moon, is this feeling that the moon suggests rather a peaceful, quiet, or rather a sort of a turbulent music? If you had to describe, imagine, in other words, if I had to put a music on your walk, would it be sort of a peaceful music, or would it be rather turbulent or violent music?
It wouldn't be turbulent or violent, but it would be deliberate, rather than just melody, because we were working and we were focused. So just to say it was soothing music wouldn't be the right answer, because we didn't have time for soothing music. Only when we went back in and tried to get some sleep would there be time for soothing music.
And on the moon itself, you didn't listen to any music while you were there?
I don't recall I had time to. That's true.
One question: did you have between these two evas on the moon? Did you sleep relatively correctly?
Pretty well.
Was this because there was not much room in the LEM, I imagine? But do you remember how it felt? I mean, it must be strange to fall asleep on the moon.
Well, we rigged our hammocks so that we were across each other like this. The LEM cabin was a T cabin. It's like that, and so we had rigged our hammocks one across and the other way, and we both tried to sleep, but we both were concerned, since we were on a slight slope. We had a feeling we were falling over, and we both kept waking up and looking out the window to make sure we were stable. We weren't sliding or falling.
Wasn't there a moment where it precisely slipped a little?
Not that we know of.
And one question: when you're back in the LEM and you look through the window just before going to sleep, do you remember this feeling of looking at the craters and observing the moon?
No, not particularly.
Too busy in your mind, or too active?
Well, focused on the job at hand, whatever we were doing at that point. Powering down from the day, getting some food, getting relaxed and rested, getting ready for sleep. We were occupied. Mind was busy doing something all the time.
But even when the day was finished, when it was time for you to go to sleep, then you
We
felt.
still had procedures to go through to do that. When we were ready to go to sleep, okay, we could lie down and start to go to sleep. But then it was restless. It was a restless night.
Mm-hmm. Of course, very very short trip too, I imagine.
And maybe it was also you had to keep alive
Yeah.
to make everything the
Yeah.
correct manner, not to make mistakes.
No mistakes.
There's one thing I see next to you, and this is this handle that really was with you on the moon.
That was the one on my side of the cockpit, yes.
I mean, would it be possible for me to explain how you used it and how it worked?
I'm sorry.
You would like to, if you could
well,
show
it's
how it's work.
Just like a control in an aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
A pitch up and down, yaw side to side, or roll like an airplane. So it's the same controls you have in an airplane.
This was the one you actually brought to the moon. Huh?
Yeah,
this
that's
one,
correct.
and it was the same, exactly the same as the one that Ed had.
Well, we had two of them, one
Mhm.
on each side of the cockpit. Plus, we had thrusters for each direction, forward and aft,
Mhm.
side to side, up and down. For linear, this is for rotation.
Mm-hmm.
This turned the spacecraft this way, that way, but the other thrusters did it that way, and that
Mhm.
way.
And this one here,
Well, this was a rotational
Mhm.
controller.
was it needed a lot during the descent?
No, by and large, the descent was controlled by the computer, and we only had to take over in the final stages of landing.
Mm-hmm. Because in fact, the descriptions of the craters were not as well done. I mean, there were still surprises at the arrival, I imagine.
Well, yeah, we didn't have perfect knowledge of what the landing site was like.
Huh? Mm-hmm.
We only had photos of it taken from a distance.
From flying above the moon, what was, in your opinion, the most spectacular landscapes of the moon on the surface?
I don't think I ever thought of it in that term. We were identifying where we were and being able to spot what was on the map, where we were on the map.
Mm-hmm. But you don't, looking back, you don't have a feeling, or there were places that were, or let's say, more spectacular than others,
No,
like craters?
Didn't think of it in those terms at all.
And did your colleague who stayed around the moon have more time since he took a lot? He took a lot more pictures, of course.
His job was mapping the lunar
Mhm.
surface.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he was doing, or taking pictures and mapping. That wasn't our job, so we didn't
Mhm.
try to do it.
Mr. Mitchell, I would like you to tell me, give me a statement about what Swiss Apollo means for you.
I'm Edgar Mitchell. I was lunar module pilot on Apollo 14 in February 1971. Upon looking at our Earth from space, I became obsessed with the idea that we need to spend time creating a more sustainable civilization, that our population growth, our consumption of resources is rapidly making our planet uninhabitable for us. And that takes the effort of all of us being attuned to that problem and to start to try to solve it. And in the 20th century, with our population increasing from about 2 billion people to starting to approach 9 billion people in the 21st century, we have a real problem on our hands of having a sustainable civilization. And I applaud and work with all individuals and organizations that are oriented toward solving this particular problem.
Thank
Okay.
you very much, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you very, very much.